And welcome back to this episode of The Brass and the Truth. Today we're going to focus on the recent firings of top military officials by the Trump administration. Pete Hegseth has, for lack of a better phrasing, put out the chopping block for officers and NCOs at the highest levels that either didn't make the cut, have pushed DEI and woke policies that have really drilled into the military service, or just those that aren't supporting the military's mission to win America's wars. So that might be a pointed take, but that's what's being pushed. Red leg. What are we seeing with you know who's getting fired, who's not? What have they done? What have they not done?
Obviously, this is becoming very political simply because of who the president is. If this was Joe Biden still, I don't think this would have gotten as much publicity. This sure didn't really when Barack Obama committed his purge of the military. I find that's what I kind of find funny about this is everyone is on one political spectrum is losing their minds about this, and they completely ignore the over 100 officers that Barack Obama had purged from the military when he was in office. But it's just kind of from someone who did serve, it's kind of laughable just listening to the amount of people who never served give their opinions about these, saying that, for example, he's doing this to gain control of the military and some of these people didn't do anything wrong. It's like, yes, a couple of these people did do something wrong. I like to educate people who have never served, and that's part of the purpose of this show. But if you're going to make some ignorant comments to it, that's where I kind of cross the line personally. If you just don't have any idea about the military, just stay silent and just ask questions. Like, for example, one that's been very debatable that we'll talk about is Colonel Baez Ramirez regarding the chain command board. People act like she had all the right to not post those. No, she absolutely did not. She had to post those, and we'll explain why. That it's not free will. It's not like she is. She works for the federal government. She works for the commander in chief. She had to post those, and again, we'll go more in detail. But for some people who never served and saying that she had freedom of speech should not post those, that's her base. No, that base is owned by the federal government. They gave her responsibility of it. So what goes on that post is not meaning like she has control and she doesn't own it. The federal government owns it.
Yeah. So you mentioned it. I just want to hit on it real quick. So what we're talking about for those that haven't ever served in the military or don't know, haven't been on a military installation, within every building that houses a command, a unit, whatever, there are portraits on the wall for the express purpose of putting a face to a name of people in leadership positions. So when you walk in the door, it's your first day at the unit, you take a look up to your left or your right, and you see this typically pyramid of photos, which is done so that you could see who's at the top of the chain and who the subsequent units are. And each portrait will have under it a nameplate that gives the rank, name, and position of that person. So typically, this means that you have a board with the acting president, secretary of defense, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and then you've got the general or admiral of that installation, or whatever the highest unit in that area is, followed by your unit's parent unit commander and NCO, your unit's commander and NCO, and then subsequent staff positions or important people that you need to know. This board will also include civilians in buildings that have multiple high-ranking civilians that make decisions. So all that to say, this board is very important for new people so that they don't walk around and meet so-and-so and say, hey, what up, dude? And it turns out that it's a general. But also to give that respect to that authority so that, if an order comes from the top, it's obeyed as long as it's lawful. And so to say that this commander didn't put President Trump's portrait up on the wall is inherently wrong, because they're trying to say that he is not part of the chain of command, of which he legally is. So all regulation aside, whether or not it's legally required aside, it just makes sense to keep that in there. And it's been done that way for decades.
Installations that have been caught taking longer than they should, pulsing President Trump, Secretary Hesketh, and whoever the secretary of their department. In this case, it would be Secretary Driscoll. Just a little bit of background: Colonel Sheila Baez Ramirez. She's the garrison commander of Fort McCoy. And now, what the Army has said, the suspension for her is not related to the misconduct. That misconduct has to do with the board, but it happened right after they opened up an investigation regarding this board. So it's pretty much given that it has to do with this board. Now, some people say that that board isn't the garrison facility itself, it's another unit. So I imagine they would not have suspended her if they did not believe that she had some role in it. I mean, this is not coming from Donald Trump or Pete Hesketh or Secretary Driscoll. This is all being done by whoever is investigating within the Army. They're the ones that are having the authority to do the suspension. A lot of it, people are saying it was him or whatever. It's just speculation from people who don't know how the system works or whatever. But I just want to point out, like the Telegram, they headline an article that says Army commander suspended after refusing to display Trump photo. But again, this is not a controversy. This is just how it is in the military. You have to post these individuals. You don't have to agree with their policies or whatnot. This is something that has gone on since the beginning of the military been using these chain of command boards. And they'll still continue using them after President Trump. So if you're going to get mad if people had done that to a president who is a Democrat, then get mad that people are doing it to a Republican. So don't pick and choose. Again, this is also part of Army regulations, military policy, and also military law. Because part of this comes down through an order as well, to post these portraits of these individuals, because they are part of the chain of command. They are your commander. They are your superior. So if anything, you can get UCMJ for this, either through UCMJ of insubordination or disobeying an order. Depends on what they want to do to you. Now, sometimes you will see where some units, they will probably doodle on the pictures, but they will always say, as long as you get the picture up there, it's fine. You can do whatever you want on it. I've seen some crazy pictures before, but just outright not putting the picture there is a no-go.
Yeah, so, I mean, I wouldn't advocate for anybody to put a photo of, Trump's toupee flowing to the left or whatever, but arguably, you could do it.
I mean, they see parts of that individual there. Instead of saying what picture.
That's my commander-in-chief, don't you know? No, but I would, on this trend, I would like to get into some of these other firings. And if we want to start with Franchetti, Myers, and Lagan, I think he fired Lagan the day after he got in office. Like, that was the Coast Guard commander.
Yeah, I don't really focus anything as a Coast Guard. I mean, he really does. But you can talk about the Coast Guard. I do know that the Coast Guard one, yes, we do read up on that individual, honestly, and for the firing, because that individual did not put the interests of our security of the coast first. They were definitely putting what they call DEI first. And for everyone out there who is very advocate about this DEI and all this stuff, I will tell you, and anyone who has served will say that the military is one of the most exclusive areas. Like, they don't care where you're from, who you are, whatever, you will be involved. And if someone bullies you for your skin color, sex, or whatever, and other dudes will come up and put that guy straight. DEI really doesn't have any business in the military because it is very destructive, and we saw that the case with the Coast Guard. But I'll let you discuss a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons I found it funny was it's just like how quickly they moved on that one, and I'll have to look into exactly why. But these three, and the reason I mentioned their names together is that these three are the female 4 stars that. Two of which I don't know why they were fired. One I think I know about, and I'll let you talk about Myers because I think you're more familiar. But the firing of Linda Franchetti doesn't show as much detail in a lot of the stories. I think there's some missing facts here I'm sure behind closed doors there were issues, but the common trend is the words lost faith in their ability to command or lead. And I think that's telling as there's not details. Devil's advocate for the other side to say that it wasn't justified, but that there's possibly more corruption deeper, and we're just trying to cut the heads off to let better grow.
So this is coming from Stars and Stripes about Admiral Linda Fagan. I want to point out this is a trans individual. So yeah, the reason why Fagan was fired, it was because of leadership deficiencies, operation failures, and handling of service recent sexual assault scandal. This is all coming from a senior official from the Department of Homeland Security. And I do recall that there was some massive sexual assault scandal that was going on within the Coast Guard. And I do remember seeing a lot of comments from some Coasties who were pretty happy about it. But this is part of what the article says regarding the investigation. The investigation known as Operation Foiled Anchor was an internal review of sexual assault and harassment cases that occurred between 1990 and 2006 at the Academy. As part of Foiled Anchor, the Coast Guard Investigative Service reviewed 102 reports of rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment at the Academy and identified 63 potential victims. This is when Fagan was working at the Coast Guard Academy, by the way. An investigation finalized a report on 2020, which found that the Academy knew of accusations against 30 of 43 people, but only 5 were reported to criminal investigators. It included Academy leaders failed to take sufficient action to ensure a safe environment for cadets, yet no one was held accountable. Congress only found out about Foiled Anchor in June 2023 as reporters at CNN learned of its existence and began reporting about it.
So, quite a lot to digest there.
Yeah.
Realistically, one of those things where it's like, why did it take, if all that's true, why did it take the inauguration, election, and confirmation of President Trump and then, Pete Hegseth? Why did this not lead people to push or oust Fagan sooner?
Well, again, the show is not supposed to be focused on politics or whatnot, but again, what was one of the main focus of the last administration? It was about inclusion of trans in when it came to the military, DEI, and trans. So how would it look for the administration by pushing that agenda if they have fired the most senior-ranking individual who is trans? That's part of the reason why I brought up the individual being trans.
Yeah, and so I'm not trying to make it political in the sense of, he's so much better. I mean to say that it's sad that the military allowed for such things to continue with or without one administration or another, because the chiefs of staff should have had some play in this beforehand.
Yeah, and again, for all current and future audience, this is part of why we started this show and why we want y'all's assistance in trying to grow. So if you're currently listening, try to help spread the show so we can help get some of this stuff out. because of the fact Admiral Fagan had some type of involvement in a sexual assault that was going on at the Coast Guard Academy long before becoming the head of the Coast Guard. Fagan should never have reached that position if the Congress had known about this incident. And that's kind of what we want to do. We want to make sure that things like this is just put to a stop. No more cover-ups in protecting senior officials. I mean, this is the toxic stuff that we've been talking about, what we've been talking about the last couple episodes. This is disgusting that this stuff goes on in the military, and we have personally experienced this stuff. We personally haven't seen this stuff. It just outright needs to end.
Oh, yeah. And so to go to the next one, I mean, this is levels of incompetence at all levels that allow for this, but also complacency and complicitness. So, yes, in the last administration there was a focus, but within the military itself for probably 2 to 3 decades, because it wasn't just under Biden. When Trump was president before Biden, there was still some of this going on. Like there weren't actions taken, and I don't know if that's political or not. It's to say that there were members put in place from before him, during him, and after him. Grain of salt, whatever people think about Trump, it happened on his watch, before him, and after him. So it's not really him that I'm trying to focus on, but to say that the military itself has degraded over the past decade and a half in this way. And it's due to multiple failures of leadership, multiple fails in culling poor leaders, and the promotion of leaders over others who deserved, that led people to get out in droves. And so I think that's probably indicative of many of those problems. And we're probably going to see a resurgence in the next couple of years because of a greater confidence in it, but it's going to come at the cost of quite a bit. And that's what's going on.
So they've already released the percentage of recruiting for this month compared to last year, so February last year. We'll talk about a whole episode comparing the increase of recruiting and retention in those who have left the military who are rejoining. They have seen an increase in that. But going back to what we're trying to talk about, part of these firings has to do about getting rid of the bad apples. I understand it's very difficult for those who never served to understand. Everyone wants to say, like, oh, but only years of service they have done.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
No, it really
want people to stay.
It really doesn't. It's honestly, again, as we mentioned in a previous episode, and those who haven't, always check out previous episodes. It is honestly really not that difficult to stay in the military. As long as you're willing to continue raising your right hand and saying, I am committed, and you're not a shitbag, that's what they, as military lingo, you can keep on moving up. And to make it to a general or an admiral, all you gotta do is to basically kiss ass to Congress, and you'll get that star. So that's the case of these individuals. They just basically kiss ass to get there. I'm sorry, but that's just how it actually works. You have to get approved by Congress to get your star, and you got to play that political game. But it honestly is not that hard. Just because you got 20 years of service does not mean jack shit, to be honest.
No. And so there's going to be people like Myers, I think is the other one we wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Colonel Myers? Because
yeah,
I'm not familiar with.
Colonel Myers, this incident happened immediately after Vice President J.D. Vance had left Greenland. So he had visited our space base there in Greenland. I'm not going to try and pronounce the base. I'm not going to reiterate what he was saying, other than the fact that this is the same message that the administration has been given about Greenland, about how we want Greenland and all this other stuff. But after he left, according to a whistleblower, she sent an internal email to everyone on the base, and I'm going to quote here, and you can find this on Task and Purpose. There's a whole article on it. I do not presume to understand current politics, But what I do know is the concerns of the U.S. administration discussed by Vice President Vance on Friday are not reflective of space base. I'm not going to try to pronounce this installation's name. That's why she got fired. It's simply because of that comment. It's a justifiable firing. You cannot say, as a commander, especially the post commander, that you do not represent what the administration is doing or saying or whatever. That is exactly what you are, especially when you're overseas. That's what they always teach you as a cadet or a midshipman. You are, when you're a post commander, a representative of the administration. So she went completely against what she was taught. That is basically I'm losing my train of thought of insubordination. It's insubordination right there.
Yeah. So these is becoming more common though, and I think Colonel Myers, the reason we want to talk about it, is that we've seen a level of, just disrespect to the chain of command, uh, but also just a disdain for leadership in such a political sense that it's going to cause strife that is going to weaken our military. And so removing these leaders is 100%, for that reason alone, a justifying factor, because the last thing we need, if our adversaries were to gather, decide to create further strife or attack, is for us to have commanders who would not give soldiers orders to defend the nation because of a beef with the current political regime. Like, do I think all of them would do that? No. But the fact that there's a possibility that any one of them could, that is a threat to national security, and that starts to border on the line of treason. And yeah, none of these guys are going to get charged with treason, and that's good because they haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah, that's not going to happen unless at time of war or you actively gave information to another nation.
Right. They're not Mark Milley, but they're toeing the line of creating the culture that does not follow orders. Just, not even that long ago, I heard from, Leavenworth that they were told not to respond to the email by Musk and Doge and Trump. It's like, that's a simple order, but it starts with simple orders.
Yeah, that one though, there was a lot of confusion because even other members of the department were a little antsy about that because of the fact that they didn't want to have their staff accidentally provide classified information. They wanted a little bit more clarification on can they provide information that is not classified, or do they have to provide information that was classified? But I do know that there were probably some that were trying to in the case that you're trying to apply. But yeah. But the thing is, you get some of y'all on the one side of the political spectrum can say that all this is him trying to take control of the military, whatever, make a bunch of yes men or whatever. Honestly, there has never been a time in the military have we had so many commanders act so insubordinate towards the president. And if you have ever served, you would know that that's honestly scary. It doesn't matter if you're supportive of the president or not. If we were to go to war, even if it's a defensive war, say that we get attacked by China, we honestly rely on these people to defend us. That's the thing. Just because of their hatred towards who is the same president.
And it's that resentment and hatred that I don't understand. Like, it's not warranted. Hatred is something that people should not generally feel towards others unless they are so wronged, and we're not. And that's not the place. These commanders are overly political in a way that is unfortunately common. But I want to move to the next group.
Well, we have I want to do one is Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield.
Yeah.
Because of her comment, according to a source. So she was fired, but DOD didn't give any information point of view go on social media. I know what people say about social media, but honestly, you can get a little bit more information from that than you honestly could from the government. A source from what a source that was in this meeting that she held said she held an all hands on deck meeting and said we will wait them out 4 years. And when that came out, that's when you had her get fired. So there's no that obviously there's no coincidence. It had to have been because of that. Because they're saying that it's not a relationship or to that or whatever. Obviously they're taking the safe route. They're not going to provide any information, but there's obviously it happened right after that source came out with that information. But again, there again is insubordination, and this is coming from a vice admiral. And obviously, like, where did you gain this? I'll really wait them out 4 years. I mean, he's only going to be in that position for a couple of years.
Right. Well, and Vice Admiral Shoshana is also a NATO liaison for us. Her position is directly tied to our allies. And if there's a lack of confidence, if there's a insubordination for someone who interacts with our allies, that's going to undermine confidence in us for our allies to the point that we'll have weaker bonds or we may have people take advantage of us. And I think that's something that we'll get to in another episode about defense pacts and what we're doing and the ask by the current administration to increase NATO's spending on defense funding.
But just the fact that she is talking about she had all hands on deck. So basically, she had all her first line commanders come into this meeting, and she's including all of them to weigh out Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump. So she's trying to include all these individuals in trying to be insubordinate. That is what made this even more dangerous than what some of the other individuals did.
And you know what? I gotta say, there are a ton of people out there that are afraid of a military coup and all these things. They're like,
I've been seeing there are people on the one side of the political spectrum that is asking for us to have a military coup to get rid of Donald Trump.
Right. So it goes both ways. Like some people are like, well, we might as well have people take over. And then we've also got people on one side that are like, well, they're taking over. They're getting rid of all the, like you said, they're trying to create yes men. And I'm like, at the end of the day, it could be, right? We don't know if this is the future Nazi Germany because the people then didn't see it coming the same way that we couldn't see it if it was that. But when it comes to sharpening the sword or the scalpel that is the U.S. military, the special operations community, like that doesn't happen if you leave corroded waste on the sword. So for those that say it could be, you're right, it could be. But if the next administration is the opposite political spectrum and they did the same thing, we could all say the same. You don't know what's gonna happen, and you've got to push for your Congress people, the one who approve the appointment of generals, because that's the greatest part is all these leaders have been at those levels have appointments by Congress. They have to be approved by Congress. And I don't know how much that oversight really is, but when you have generals and admirals consistently involved with politicians and they allow them to continue the practices that they do, all this firing may be done by Hegseth, but all the hiring was done by all of our senators and representatives. So we should maybe be taking a look at them and their hiring practices rather than the firing.
Well, it's also we have discussed this off the record about doing an episode discussing how the military, or at least the Army, how they do officer evaluations and how that needs to be changed. Obviously, that's different from every branch, but that's an example of it. It definitely needs to be changed. But yeah, we can probably discuss the other individuals, especially another high-profile firing. So the biggest one, obviously, was the firing of General C.Q. Brown Jr., who was the Joint Chief of Staff. A lot of people try to make this about race and everything about that. And I'll say again, when it comes to the military, do not bring up race or anything like that. Like that stuff honestly does not exist when it comes to the military. And we'll go over some of the things that General Brown said that is just repulsive, and honestly, most individuals in the military would outright disagree. The military is not as racist as what you think. And you can say what you want about the current administration, but it has to do with some of the things that he was doing. And do you want to go over that memorandum? Honestly, a good example.
Yeah. So in this memorandum, we have diversity and inclusion are an essential part of our society and key to success of any organization. And he goes in and he talks about it's imperative that the numbers reflect the DEI percentages, and the pool is broken down in this way: male 64%, female 36, white 43, for men 8.5, black, Asian 6.5, American Indian 1%, Hawaiian Native 1.5, and Hispanic Latino for ethnicity is 9.5. And then for the females, the rates honestly are pretty similar, with 24.5, 4.5, 3.5, 0.5, 0.5, and 5.5. It's almost like half. So you got half as many females as males, and the percentages are at half. So they're looking for this goal of this, right? This is not the fact of how it is, but their goal is about 2/3, 1/3 men to women, and an 8.5% black to 43% white. This is an aspiration of aligning resources to invest in our long-term goals and will not be used in any manner that undermines our merit-based processes. You're directed to develop a diversity and inclusion outreach plan aimed at achieving these goals no later than 30 September 2022. And so he's directing a goal that's not to inflict any change to the merit-based process. However, statistically, that's just not probable. And anyone who has done a class in sociology, statistics, or otherwise knows that it's not possible for you to pick and choose your results when it comes to people and ethnicity and race. This idea that as a recruiter I could go out and try to look for 8.5% of my recruits to be black and them all succeed is asinine. Like, what if I get 20% of my field be black applicants, and only 40 or only 30% are white? There's no guarantee that you're going to get the 8.5 out of that or the 43 out of that. There's a human factor and element to it, but there's also, who are you taking away from? If you get 7% of your black population and you have 44% white apply, are you going to ignore 1% of those white guys to try and make up for it? Are you going to have a recruiting shortage? Are you going to hurt the service to try and meet those goals? And so you can't. You have to take what society gives you.
And to know this when he was the chief of staff of the Air Force. But this is also a little counterintuitive because, again, this does sound very DEI, and part of the DEI is to further bring people of all race and so on together. But this can honestly cause resentment. It's like the Asian guy could be like, why is he this African American guy getting this position when I did better than him? You're giving him the position because of his skin color and all that stuff. So, and honestly, that's not the way how the military should work at all. That's not how you're going to create a lethal force. And as for like recruiting, that is also, it's been proven time and time again. Some people of races are more inclined to join the military than others. No matter what we do, it's how it is. The military has done so many things trying to increase the recruiting numbers of one race and the other. It's just, it hasn't really worked.
Honestly, I'm surprised that there's a 43% white from this. Not to say that I'm surprised that it's that number specifically. I'm surprised that it's not more of one category or another. Because I'll tell you, truthfully, when I was in, the number of Black, Hispanic, and Asian soldiers seemed a lot higher than 8.6 and 1% or 8.6 and 9%.
I think it is higher in the Army than it is in the Air Force.
Which
Because I think in the Army, I think the Army is like 20%, something like that.
Yeah,
From a couple years ago.
Socioeconomic problems too, because here's the truth, and for any listener out there, I'd love to debate it anytime. The military will always recruit in poor areas, whether you're poor white, poor black, does not matter. And so that's for enlisted. For the officer pools, they're gonna recruit in the more affluent areas. And so if that happens to be mostly white, then that can explain some of these numbers as far as his recruiting goals. But I'm just surprised that we put a number to it, because if I went to, they're building a TSM microchip processor facility here in Arizona, and a metric ton of work is being done to provide for a Taiwanese neighborhood. And I went and I was a recruiter in this area, and I knew that there were a ton of intelligent, capable, and freedom loving Taiwanese people coming over, getting their citizenship. And I only wanted to talk to, what is it, 6.5% of them in that neighborhood. I'd be missing out on a whole lot of recruiting, because I could talk to that entire neighborhood and I'm probably going to find a ton of capable, intelligent, well off, affluent, highly educated people. But hey, let's keep it down to a percent. And this is where the DEI in numbers is just asinine. It's like, if you go to San Francisco or you live in California, are you really gonna put a number on the Hispanic and Latino community that you're gonna recruit from? There's no way.
Well, also, Air Force is the most difficult branch to enter for both enlisted and officers. So you need a high ASVAB score on the enlisted side to get in there. Not trying to say anything regarding that. If you're wanting to increase those numbers in some of those areas, you may need to lower your standards as well. Because, as you said, in enlisted, you recruit from poor areas. And we have kind of done the studies on those. People have done it when you go to more poor areas, go to less educated people. So if you're going to have high standards on your ASVAB, are you going to get that many recruits into the Air Force? So obviously, you can't really lower standards for the Air Force because they are very technical. We can't really lower standards either because of the fact that you need that lethality of the Air Force. They are the largest, and we need them to stay lethal to be able to defeat our enemies in the air and also air-to-ground combat. Also, when he was chief of the Air Force, he said that diversity was going to be a top priority of his. And when it comes again to the military, one of your top priorities should be about furthering the advance of technology of the military, of your branch, obviously. This because it's always an issue. And also making your soldiers, or in this case, your airmen, lethal.
Right.
I mean, you're in this case, airmen can take care of the diversity on their own. Again, I will tell you, this shows you how he has been away from the lying in this for so long that he doesn't know that 10 dudes will just beat the hell out of a guy who decides to be a bully towards somebody because of their skin tone. Those guys will take care of their own, and they'll take care of any type of stuff. And again, we have EO for those incidents. We don't need that stuff.
I'll tell you, the military has become one of the least racist functions of our society, for the pure fact that you can't get through a day without working with somebody who's the opposite race of you. It's just not feasible. It's not probable. I think the big miss here is that the leadership is either so distanced from that and or so hurt by what may have happened to them decades ago that they're trying to bring in, fixes for problems that don't exist anymore. The military has always been a microcosm of our society, and the younger generation within the military has gotten so much better at being accepting and understanding. Now, you're still going to get ignorance, you're still going to get all that. But these leaders that think that they need to fix the system by these sweeping changes, these memorandums that implicitly tell their subordinates what to do, are missing the mark. They need culture where they speak well of people around them without highlighting this guy. This guy's the best black guy I've ever known, or this best white. No, they just need to be like, hey, so and so did a great job on this, and I would go into combat with them because the way I showed anyone respect when I was in, and the way they showed it to me, was saying that they would sit in a foxhole with me.
Yeah, and a couple other big points mentioned on General Brown to show that he was as focused on the wrong things. And again, for those who want to argue for DEI, you need to understand when it comes to the military's number one job is to do what? Fight and win our wars. And pushing DEI over the things like training and developing the technology and our soldiers to win those wars. They don't intertwine. You can't, you have to pick those things that will help us fight and win our wars. But so when you said the beauty of George Floyd's death forced Air Force to take a hard look at ourselves, and the military needs to break up the white boys club, and the military needs to make sure the military has a diverse set of candidates. And then he also, that was back in 2021 when he did an interview with PBS. And then he also did an interview with Chicago Council on Global Affairs back in 2020. It looks like he was a 2-star at this time. He said, I hire for diversity, and I purposely build my front office, and my team with diversity. So again, it just shows you this has the wrong priorities. For the record, we're not trying to say diversity is absolutely wrong. It's just when it comes to the military, if you're going to be a general, you need to make sure, especially when you're in charge of the entire Air Force in this case, that the Air Force is the number one Air Force in the world, can maintain air superiority in any conflict that we're in, provide ground support to our soldiers and our Marines when we're at war, and so on. But if this is going to be our major concern, obviously, like those many key things that's going to help us win wars, it's just going to prevent us from winning, say, a war with China.
And this is just going into what people really understand about the people who serve under them, serve with them, and serve above them. We are very confident on this podcast that the military will succeed going forward, that we will win these wars, and that we will do great things so long as we can take the politics out of it. We can take out the unnecessary fixes for problems that don't exist. I could go on for days about the things our government does to try and fix non-existent problems, but race and what this administration is and what it does and how things are not the problem. We need to train our soldiers and be great at what we do, and that's it. I think Red Leg laid it out. Hopefully people aren't panicking about the current firings and look at it as an opportunity for growth, and I hope and I pray that we're making the right decisions.
Yeah, and I imagine this is not the end. There are a couple other firings with no information. For example, you had Commander Brett Robley and Command Master Chief Felix Phillips of Security Squadron 4. They were relieved for loss of confidence. The Navy never gave reasons for that. You also had Colonel Mark Whitman, the Marine Commander of Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort, for loss of confidence. That still has not been disclosed. The other one you have is Chief Master Sergeant Tony Green. Now, yes, he's an active commander, but he is the top enlisted personnel of the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Command. That is a high-profile firing. He was actually fired by the commander of U.S. Air Force Special Operations Command for loss of confidence, and there is an ongoing investigation. So, with there being an ongoing investigation, I imagine we'll get some more information on that.
Heck yeah. Well, guys, that's our episode of The Brass and the Truth on the current situation with the firing of high ranking individuals. We hope you'll join us in the comment section on YouTube, TikTok, and all the other social medias. Leave your comments, leave us your opinions, ask us questions, or give your experience. And as always, stay safe out there.